Wonderfully said, comrade. To switch gears a little bit, you've also written a book on why progressives should combat cancel culture with the great title, Cancel This Book. Can you tell us a bit about why it's so important to fight cancel culture and other liberal phenomena which have found themselves rampant, unfortunately, in the modern left?
Yes. I mean, what I saw, first of all, I should explain, I do explain it in the book why I wrote the book. It was informed by something that happened here in Pittsburgh. A very long time peace activist named Molly Rush, who was in her day pretty famous for being involved in this plowshares action against nuclear weapons with the Berrigan brothers and others. She was arrested at the time, and she founded or co-founded the Thomas Merton Center here in Pittsburgh, which is a peace and justice group in Pittsburgh. It's one of the oldest peace and justice groups of its kind in the United States. And she continued activism throughout her life up until the present time. She's in her 80s now. But in 2020, she reposted, someone had posted some meme which was critical of some of the violence that surrounded the BLM protests that summer. And she merely reposted the meme. And people immediately jumped on her in social media, attacked her. So she very quickly took the meme down and she said, "I'm sorry, I've learned a lot from this." But that wasn't enough for people. The Thomas Merton Center itself, the board, put out a public letter saying that they would now disassociate themselves with Molly Rush. They would no longer work with her. They removed her name as a co-founder of the Thomas Merton Center and canceled her. I mean, this was actually a case of true and thorough cancellation where she was basically eradicated from participation and even from the memory of the Thomas Merton Center. And I was good friends with Molly Rush and involved in the Thomas Merton Center. My ex-wife actually was the executive director of it for a time. And I was just horrified by this. And this is there's many examples you can find of this in many towns. Where someone does something on Twitter or Facebook or social media or says something or writes something that someone finds as offensive. Maybe objectively it is offensive or it's not. But the point is, it's one slip of the lip and they're done. They're done. Everything they've done for 50 years is eradicated. And this is a horrifying thing, not just as a leftist, am I saying, as a person, I'm saying this. There is just this certain lack of forgiveness and the ability for people to, find redemption. And this, and I think you guys have a book out that gets into this question of purity, where there's the demand for 100% purity. And we can't demand that. We're human beings. We're not pure. None of us are pure. Again, I was raised Catholic. We are all sinful people. We're all born with sin. And he who is not sin casts the first stone. I think all of those values are important. Even as communists, we have to, we should try to help each other improve, but to cancel out persons, to throw people out of our groups for small mistakes, destroys the movement, and it has destroyed the movement. The movement is in very bad shape in this country, and I think this type of fetishism of purity is part of why it is where it is. And we do the same things not just to each other, but to leaders, to historical leaders, right? It's like, oh well, that guy did something bad, and okay, well, forget about him. Lenin did this, and so forget about him. And Fidel did this, so he's bad. And they don't look at the great things that these people did. They don't look at a balance sheet. I think you have to look at the balance sheet of people's lives. Yeah, okay, this guy did this, and that was bad, and that maybe cost some lives. But how many lives did he save by what he did, and what did he do for the world? And those are important discussions. It's not a simple question when you talk about people and you talk about leaders. And yeah, that's why I wrote the book. And that's what I wrote the book about. And I talk about many instances of it. and many different issues. But we live in a time now where people are being censored and canceled and vilified and attacked because people just basically don't agree with some things they say, and that's not you know leftists have always been known for their very vigorous debates amongst themselves, very energetic debates, to say the least, right? And that's what we should encourage, not trying to cancel people because we disagree with them. We should win them over. If our position's right, we should be articulate enough to win people over to our position, not to say because you disagree with us, you're out. And I'm not even going to tell you why, or whatever. So that's it. That's my view on that.
That's wonderfully said. And I think it comes from such a place of ignorance, because do these people think that they've been themselves perfect their whole life? Because if they realize that they have changed as well with time, then if what they perceive to be a mistake in someone else, they have to understand that, if it's really a mistake, they can potentially change. And the best approach to helping them change is not just canceling them and putting them aside. But part of the paradox is also that while our comrades end up being too impure to support, and so impure that we must cancel, a lot of these same people don't find imperialism impure enough to not support at the end of the day. And Jim Crow Joe ends up being, always in their assessment of the lesser of two evils, the person that we end up voting for. So it's a paradox at the core of their purity fetish and their cancel culture, which, the things that are cancelable are sometimes connected to the things that in other areas end up substantially opposing the existing order. And then they have this blind spot for these other very, very much more imperfect things that they end up supporting at the end of the day.
No, I think that's a great point. People tend to be canceled for things they say, and maybe for, certain, whatever, sexual proclivities or whatever. And then meanwhile, as you say, a guy like Biden, who is leading us to World War III, may lead us to nuclear war, they don't care about. They don't care that he's, has been supporting the war in Yemen, which is the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. People don't care Obama, how many people he killed, with drones and bombs. And in Libya, the fact he destroyed a nation in Libya, the fact that now because of what he did and his NATO allies did in Libya, there are now slaves being sold in public markets. That's not cancelable, right? He's still a great guy, right? But then someone who, again, has some meme we don't like, they're cancelable. It's just silliness. I mean, it's really, but you know what what it comes down to a lot of times, and this is what's the most upsetting, that we try to cancel people that we have more power and status over, right?
Right.
Someone like a Molly Rush in Pittsburgh, yeah, she's been around a long time and has a certain notoriety, but she's cancelable. She's an old lady who could be canceled. Obama, when we think about trying to cancel someone, we're like, oh, well, that guy, how could we cancel him? He was a president, so we won't even attack him, right? I mean, part of it is a weird thing where, we're kicking down instead of punching up, which is what we should be doing, is punching up. We should be holding our leaders accountable for, as you say, much worse things, trying to win over our comrades, right? And treating them with a certain amount of forgiveness and whatnot. Instead, it's the reverse. And as leftists, that's not how we should deal with the world, right? It should be, we go after, we speak truth to power. That's what we need to be doing. Not thinking that by virtue signaling, with the rank and file, that we're doing something, because we're really not.
So true.
Except destroying our own ranks. I mean, if you think that's good, but and you think about, I was just reading, I just finished a couple books. One was "In Quiet Flows the Dawn," which is a book written during the Soviet days, but it deals with people living on the Don River in Rostov at the turn of the century. And these are poor peasants who live horrible, terrible lives, they do terrible things to each other, live very violent lives within their homes, etc. And, these are the people that were the foundation of the revolution, the Russian Revolution. Could you imagine if everyone who had done something bad or ignorant was canceled? They wouldn't have a revolution, right? They were ignorant people who had many blind spots, and yet they built a revolution from those people. Those people built a revolution. And again, the idea that you would ask for purity from people like that is a joke. It's a joke. And that you would want that type of purity now means you just don't want a revolution. If you don't want to work with that guy in West Virginia, and I met a lot of these guys working at the steelworkers who came into my office and they had they had their T-shirt with the American Eagle on it, and they had a tattoo with and God Bless America on it, and they, talked with a West Virginia accent, and they weren't the most polished people, and you saw them coming, and they were riding their Harley Davidson, which, by the way, steelworkers make Harley Davidsons. A lot of liberals that run from those people say, they got to be racist. These were some of the most nicest, intelligent people, best trade unionists I ever met, anti-racist, not because they were told to be anti-racist or whatever, but because, they just happen to live with black people and that's okay with them, but it's not a thing. If you can't work with those people, you're finished. I'm sorry. You're not going to make a revolution. You're out to lunch. And, the left in this country has gone down a bad road because they see those people as deplorables, and I learned a lot from people like that. And by the way, they were willing to learn from me too. My office had all these hammers and sickles and lead and all, and they'd come in and they didn't know what any of it meant, but they were very curious about it and very interested in talking about it. And, we had many discussions about stuff like that, and it was delightful, and I don't want to be Pollyannish. Obviously, a lot of those folks have their demons, again, like the rest of us, but they certainly were not irredeemable people. And by the way, a lot of them wanted the Union to endorse Bernie Sanders. They thought he was the guy. And when the Union went and endorsed Clinton, that's when they ended up supporting Trump. And one could disagree with them supporting Trump, but it wasn't inevitable. They wanted Sanders first. So what does that tell you about these people? It tells you these are people you can work with. And, we have to see that in people. We have to see the possibilities in people, not the failings. And again, I give examples in the book, people I learned about that I found fascinating. There was a Justice Black in the Supreme Court, and he was pretty liberal on the Supreme Court. He was, I think, a Kennedy appointee. Anyway, when he was a kid, he was in the Ku Klux Klan. But as he got older, he changed his views. And what they said about Justice Black is they said when he was young, he wore a white robe and scared black people. When he was older, he wore a black robe and he scared white people. We should welcome those people. We should want more of those people, right? So anyway, and I came from, my dad was pretty racist and pretty backwards in many ways, but I wasn't going to cancel him, and I think he's grown a lot since I've known him even, People can grow. Anyway, I probably said too much, but that's my view on that subject.
No, that was awesome and super relevant. Like you said, relates to the book Carlos just published, Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism. And yeah, we couldn't agree more. One of the best organizers where Carlos and I met each other, and one of the people who honestly is responsible for making me a communist, was also a member of the KKK back in the day. But for the last 20 or so years, he's been one of the staunchest, most hardworking organizers in the community, him and his partner. So yeah, don't give up on people. And we always say, you know, if you cancel people and just push them away, well, they're going to go hang out with other Trump supporters or whatever.
Right.
How are you going to, you know, get people away from these ideas if you can't even have a talk with them or give them room to change their mind?
It's exactly right. And that's our job. As organizers, that's our job, is to reach out to those people. And if we can't win them over, that's our bad. You know, that's our bad, you know, because that's what we should be doing. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good message for people. And I know you're all doing good work. I mean, that's why I've been excited to be on this show. I know you're reaching out to people, doing great work. And, you know, I'm just an old guy trying to make my way in this world. So, there you go.